Hey guys, welcome to another Kickster review. So today I'm going to be doing my full series review of Loki Season 2. As per my usual format, I'm going to break it down based on what I liked, disliked, and then give you my overall thoughts on the whole thing and a score out of 10 at the end. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so starting off with what I liked. First and foremost, Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson. To me, they were the standouts of this series in terms of characters, in terms of performances. I thought they really brought it and they kind of upped their level from the first season even. Tom Hiddleston is just fantastic in the role of Loki. He really is like the standout and he has so much gravitas and all of that. And he's perfect in the role no matter how bad I may think the writing or the script may be at times. As for Owen Wilson, he's kind of like this weird, like kind of everyman in this wacky series. Like if you look at a lot of his lines and dialogue, you could take most of them, 95% of them, and they would be like considered normal in any normal film, like just regular dialogue. So he's kind of like the normal guy in this weird wacky world. He just wants to eat pie, he wants to solve problems, like blah blah blah. And so he's a lot of fun, and he brings that Owen Wilson charisma to the role. So yeah, them two guys really were the standouts for me. Another thing I really want to commend about this show, and not just this season, but even season 1, is the production quality. I really love the sets and the aesthetic that they use, particularly in the TVA. Like I love that kind of 60s, like CIA facility look that they're going for. It's really fun and makes you brings kind of like some nostalgia almost to the show that's kind of out of nowhere. And so yeah, I really like that the production, the sets, everything that they have going for it in that regard. I think it's really well done. In the final episode, at the very end, Loki essentially assumes his role as He Who Remains, or otherwise known as the God of Stories. So he's basically controlling the universe now, holding all the timeline threads together and keeping them alive when they were about to die. And so he's really transitioned into this new role, and it did feel like kind of a natural progression, at least for this iteration of Loki that we've seen since season 1 of Loki. Not so much if you're going back to the one that we knew that died in Infinity War, that had its own arc. Now this new Loki that's kind of received the Cliff Notes version of his life, which I have issues with, but still, with what they've done, I quite enjoyed that completion of the arc. Even though I didn't love everything that happened in between, where he's arrived at the end of this season, I can appreciate, and it's kind of respectful to his character that they've made him the hero that he deserved to be based on this iteration. I have to be clear, I don't love Loki being a hero or a heroic figure, but going down the path that they've gone down, this conclusion I feel is fitting, and yeah, I think it really completes this arc quite nicely. And whilst I feel they didn't really pay off this particular thing I'm about to mention in the way that I wanted, they did hint at it a number of times, and that was like these conversations that they would have every now and then that kind of referenced the whole ethical dilemma that the TVA poses. I would have loved to have seen more of that. In fact, I think the whole show should have really revolved around this dilemma about having this much power and what it means. I felt like it got sidetracked way too many times into different side quests and different things, different directions. They didn't deal with it enough, or didn't even really make it the main story. But I would have loved for it to be more like that. There were conversations between Loki and Sylvie and even Mobius that I felt were like really what the show should be more about more of the time. But I'll give credit where it's due. They had these conversations at times and I found them interesting, and yeah, would have loved to have seen more. And now for the dislikes, so buckle up because there are going to be a few. To start off, I'm going to mention a line from the finale that I feel summarizes this thought of what my main issue with this show. So during a conversation between Loki and Kang, or He Who Remains, He Who Remains basically reveals that he meant for it to come to this point all along, because he controls everything, every timeline that ever existed. There is no free will anymore in this universe, that's been stated. And anyways, he basically makes it clear that he planned for it all to come to this moment where Loki would have to make this decision to either kill Sylvie or kill him or do something else. And there's a line by Loki in this moment where he literally says, "What a waste of time." I felt like this is almost speaking to the audience directly, like, yes, what a waste of time indeed. They basically just admitted to us, the audience, the people who they want invested in this show, to give our time, our valuable time and money towards to enjoy. They're basically admitting that everything that has happened in the first 5.5 episodes, or even the first season too, all of that to this point where towards the very end of this final episode of season 2 is basically irrelevant because it was all going to be rewritten anyway. So it's offensive in that regard if you really think about it to us. Like it's offensive to us that they take our time, like they just do not care for our time whatsoever, that they are literally admitting that everything that has happened now is a waste of time. Sure, you can say that there's been character development, there's been this and that, but story-wise and plot-wise, they're saying that it's all irrelevant. So why should we care about anything that's just happened? And this is such a common problem with all the Disney Marvel shows. You know, in this regard, I'd say that the real damage was done in season 1, where it was basically revealed that there is no free will in this universe. But this point, kind of, this conversation basically cements that and just reminds us all that, yeah, this is, okay, not everything that's happened in every Marvel product that we've ever seen was always meant to happen and was never actually done out of free will. Like, Kang was controlling it all along. And so it just makes you roll your eyes and think, like, what the hell? What are we doing here? And if you've seen my previous reviews of each episode, you would see it was a common sentiment on my behalf that I found like so much of these episodes were irrelevant. There were even whole episodes that I felt like you could just take that whole thing out and nothing is important, nothing matters. You wouldn't miss a beat. So like, and you could almost say that, like, if you just had the first half of the first episode of this season and the second half of the last episode of this season, basically Loki is just slipping. He's time slipping all over the place. He finally masters it, and then now he uses that masterfulness to basically become the god of stories and fix the timeline, the loom and the timelines and whatever. Like everything else that happens in between with Victor Timely, all this different stuff, places they visit, go to, whatever, it's really irrelevant. Not just because he says what a waste of time, but also because when you really break it down, they don't add anything to what was the final outcome of the show. Aside from that, I think another issue the show had was kind of making us not just care about what's going on story-wise, but making us care about the ramifications of what's happening within this universe. You know, there is that scene, I can't remember which episode, it's episode 2 or 3, where they're literally watching on the screen the timelines disappear, and they're acting all emotional in the TVA, seeing lines disappear on the screen because there's a whole billions of universes of people. Like, we're talking about literally the biggest genocide that has occurred within the MCU, bigger than what Thanos did. And so, like, but at the same time, we're seeing lines disappear on a screen, and that's meant to be the emotional moment of it. And it's like, what the hell? Like, that you can't invest in that. Like, show us these things happening. Don't just show us lines on the screen. Show us actual suffering. That would make us invest more and want to cheer on a resolution more, rather than just being like, okay, this is just a numbers game, and like we just got to wait and see what happens. But yeah, so it's just baffling to make those kind of decisions, or creative decisions, to portray moments like that should otherwise be very emotional. And I said this in my episode 6 review, but I'll say it again. Seeing God Loki at the end for the final 10 or so minutes of that episode, we've been waiting for that, wanting to see that. He is Loki. We want to see him being a god, whatever it is, god of mischief, god of stories, whatever. Being a god, not just this regular guy dressed up in regular clothes and a tie, doing boring missions and boring tasks. Like that's not Loki. It's depressing seeing him relegated to such a mundane existence and boring like life events and all this stuff. So yeah, it's great to see that at the very end, but it's like just makes you think, why wasn't there more of it throughout? And maybe we will get more in the future, but still, it just makes these first whole two seasons feel like complete missed opportunities in that regard. And just to give a quick mention to the story, you know, the overall story of these 6 episodes is basically the loom is malfunctioning, timelines are disappearing, we need to fix the loom gets fixed. That's basically it. That is the story, the main A plot of this show. There was plenty of side quests here and there, they were completely irrelevant, but that is the main plot. Feels really thin when you think of it like that. If that's your main goal, like that's, and I get it, like, okay, it should be very important that fixing the loom because it's all the timelines, but again, this was an issue of execution where they weren't conveying how important it was to fix the loom to save all these timelines. It just didn't come across emotionally, at least from my point of view. So with the likes and dislikes done, here's my overall thoughts. There's things that I liked about this show, and there's things that I definitely disliked about this show. I think Tom Hiddleston and even Owen Wilson really carry this show in terms of with their performances. If it wasn't for their performances, this would be completely flat, but they do bring it. And so even when the story is lacking, you do feel some sort of investment in them. That all said, I would kind of say this is one of the better MCU TV shows. I think it's on the higher end, up amongst the likes of like a WandaVision, whatever. I haven't seen all of the TV shows. Some of them just look complete trash to me, so I didn't bother, but I've seen a bunch. And I'll definitely say that this one's on the higher end from what I've seen, even compared to season 1. I think this is better than season 1. But still, by normal television standards or even just normal content standards, it's barely passable, if that. I think it's below average, if you ask me. But if I'm just comparing it to what else is going on in this universe at the moment, I think it's above average, that's for sure. And so I'm going to be kind here, and I'm going to give this show, season 2, a passing grade of 6 out of 10. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. Hope you got some interesting thoughts out of it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the show and the whole series in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and please give my channel a subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. And we'll see you next time. Bye.